what he stood for. But just before we get into that, delve into that conversation, we are getting a Kenya Gazette published just right now. It's coming through to the newsroom, stating that the 17th of October, which is Friday, shall be a public holiday in honor of the departed former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. This is signed by Kipchumba Murkomen, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration. He's actually one of the people in that flight coming back with the remains of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, which is now notified to the general public and the information that in exercise of the powers conferred by Section 3 of the Public Holidays Act, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration declares that Friday, the 17th October 2025, shall be a public holiday in honor of the departed former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. This has just been sent into the newsrooms a short while ago. And that Friday that we're talking about is also the day when the state funeral service at the Nyayo National Stadium will be happening from 8 a.m. The procession will then head back to Raila Odinga's home for an overnight vigil and then taken to Karen and then departs to Kisumu the next day, which is on Saturday. So that Friday, where all eyes will be on the Nyayo National Stadium for the state funeral, has been declared a public holiday. But let me hear what Manzo has to say about this before we dissect what you just mentioned, Willis. What are some of the greatest lessons for politicians from Raila Odinga's life and times, in your view?
First and foremost, politicians must appreciate that power belongs to the people. And that is even Article 1 of our Constitution, that the sovereign power belongs to people, and it is exercised by the people directly or through elected leaders. Meaning when the elected leaders fail, people can take action because they are the owner of the power. And when it comes to election, there is something we need to learn from Raila Odinga. He was persistent in following the truth and following electoral reforms. In fact, very many amendments of the law were done in the House, be pushed from his coalition or from his party to make sure that the election laws in Kenya are better. And also registration of persons. Yeah. You see, one of the things young people in this country should know is that when you turn 18, it is good to register as a Kenyan so that you'll be able to register as a voter and participate in the election. That particular day is a day for Kenyans to exercise their power. And one of the things is that you will see how Raila Odinga will mobilize during the period which will be declared by the electoral body for Kenyans to register. There will be a very serious campaign across the country and in his strongholds to make sure that people register as voters. And I would like to urge the young people to honor him with that, this period when we are supposed to be registering as voters, and especially the new ones, those who have never registered before. Some are saying, let it be online. It cannot be, because that law requires your biometrics to be taken and a photo and all that, so that you can be picked from the system. So then, then pursuit for justice and pursuit for fairness and also for unity. You've seen, even the worst case scenario, then Raila Odinga will unite the country. You saw the handshake with Mwai Kibaki, the handshake with Uhuru Kenyatta, and the current joining of the broad-based government, merely to stabilize the country and to make sure that despite whatever has happened, you are able to move on.
Do you think that was the right move?
Well, we were at a situation whereby the presidency was being overrun, and the Kenyans who own the power had overrun parliament, and now had threatened to overrun State House. And if Raila Odinga did not, or now went to the opposite, if he did not support the government which had already been dissolved, and President Ruto opened up now for anyone who wants to join him to build the nation to do so, or to salvage what was left. And you see, he came in to make sure that he's also checking the government from inside. He would have chosen to incite more and then the government would have collapsed.
Hold that thought in just a bit. We're coming back with that conversation shortly. Well, let me cross over straight to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where our very own Emmanuel Toh is standing by with the latest. Emmanuel, good morning. It's good to see you. How's the mood like where you are?
Well, a very good morning to you, Trevor. The mood is as is across the country. The weather tells it all. It is a gloomy day. The clouds have gathered. And of course, in the next hour and 30 minutes or so, the body of the late former Prime Minister Raila Odinga will be touching down here at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And we are currently at the international arrivals terminal. And all activities are set. We've seen the military ready. There's a military gun carriage that is just parked a few meters from where I'm standing right now, where the body of Raila Odinga will be carried on that gun carriage all the way to the CBD, to the Lee Funeral Home and back to Parliament, where the members of the public will get a chance to also view the body of Raila Odinga. There's also a hearse, a vehicle that is just a few meters there, awaiting all these to be ready. We've seen several members of the public already gathering in, the members of the military. As you can see, some of them are just walking in to ensure that they go to where the body will be touching down. As we had already been told, and as the president had already announced, this will be a state funeral, a state burial that will see all the military honors that should be accorded to a statesman like him will be happening. And of course, the KDF are taking charge of all this. We've seen members of the public trooping in. We have seen about hundreds of Kenyans who are actually already being cleared at the gate. There was a challenge getting into this location because of the massive traffic that has been here. It is a sea of humanity, a sign of the support that Raila Odinga, the ODM leader, enjoyed in his life and time, the 8 years that he has been alive. And currently, the band is just getting ready. That is one of the teams. I'm also seeing some of the officers from the presidential escort team because the president is expected to be here from any minute from now to also receive the body of Raila Odinga, who passed on in India yesterday. It is the first day since his passing on, and of course the country is still trying to come to terms with the laws, and there are still more vehicles coming in. These are dignitaries, some of them members of parliament, governors, and name them, all government officials have been enjoined in this moment of grief. And as it had been announced, all flags are flying at half-mast just to ensure that we celebrate and, of course, honor the time that Raila Odinga has been with us. And right now, there is a member, this is PS Dr. Caroline Karugu, who is just actually arriving as she also goes to the main arrival area where the VIPs will be touching down, also to be part and parcel of this process. Remember, this process is going to be a little bit congested because of the timelines that Raila Odinga had given in his will, that he should be interred exactly 72 hours after his death. But that time would have passed by Saturday morning, but the family and the funeral committee, or the burial committee that was put in place by the president, led by Professor Kithure Kindiki, the deputy president, alongside the family members, agreed that the final rites will be happening on Sunday, which will be slightly some hours after the lapse of the time. But these are the intricacies of the body being brought or in from India, where he met his demise. And of course, Trevor, it is a gloomy day. It is the moment of realization of what has hit the country. And members of the public have seen many of them, some of them donning ODM T-shirts, the orange color. ODM was expected to mark its 20th birthday a few days ago, from 10th to 12th of October, but that date was moved forward to November 12th to 16th to allow for Odinga to recuperate, but that will not happen in the last. But of course, we're here to monitor. From here, we expect that it will be a marathon of activities. After the body touches down at around 8:30 a.m., the procession will move from JKIA to Lee Funeral Home, and thereafter the body will move from Lee Funeral Home to Parliament Buildings, and the public viewing will start from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. and later on the body will proceed all the way to Lee Funeral Home. This is in tight keeping with what Odinga had asked for, just like we saw with General Francis Ogola, who passed on in April last year, where he requested to be interred exactly 72 hours after his death. And coincidentally, he also came from Siaya County, where the burial of Odinga will be happening. Remember, Odinga has been battling a lot. We did a story yesterday from the doctor who was with him for I think about 2 hours after he collapsed, and being treated and unfortunately passing on after several attempts to administer CPR, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. It never was successful, and that is what confirmed the worst. And right now, as you can see right now, these are the military officers who are just getting ready, because this has to be done with military precision. And as I had already told you, the flags are flying at half-mast, and the president had announced that these will continue for the next 7 days until the sunset of his burial, which is or rather the sunset of the 7 days, but the burial will be happening on Sunday as had been communicated. So Trevor, this is the activity, this is the mood, and we'll be here to give you the latest as they happen, Trevor.
To, before I let you go, and I know you mentioned there's a lot of activities around you, just draw for us a picture of how the setup, the whole area looks like and what the arrangement seems to be, because you can see the military band getting ready. Where you are, I believe, is the international arrivals area. Where are the people? Because we were expecting that the moment they land, what is the procession plan? Are the people, do they have a designated place where they are? What is the setup looking like?
Trevor, there's no designated area per se, but as you can see right now, there's the military is getting ready. There's a red carpet where that plane, the aircraft that is carrying the remains of Odinga will be touching down just a few meters from here, and after that it will be moving all the way. And there's some members of the public who've already been blocked from entering the gates from the main entrance. That is the main entrance of the JKIA, because the space here is a bit congested, but the government is trying as much as possible to let in as many as it can manage. And some of them actually waiting on the other side. Some have been blocked from entering because, of course, of security and also the numbers that can be accommodated here. And some of the leaders are still streaming in. So it is quite these things are happening quite fast, and there was no enough time to really put everything in place after that demise, Trevor.
What sentiments are you getting from the people who you're talking to? Because judging from that position, it seems like the people have been now still outside the airport. Therefore, it means when the gun carriage comes out, they will then join into the convoy. But what sentiments are you getting from the people eulogizing Raila? What kind of a leader do they think he was? Considering that we also know that tomorrow is now a public holiday. It's been declared officially by a Gazette notice just a short while ago.
Yeah, we have been able to speak to a few of them. Some of them have been blocked from this area, the VIP area, but most of them just want to come here and also just confirm, because some of them are still in shock. They are not yet believing that this has happened. And of course, some of them actually will be trying to speak to them as soon as we manage to leave this place. But most of them are actually hoping to get a chance to come in. There's a lot of security protocol that has been put in place. Military officers, general service officers, and of course the national police officers are still here to ensure that nothing goes amiss. There's a rigorous check at the main entrance, and there's a barricade that is just right outside JKIA main entrance to ensure that the numbers are controlled, because this is a normal day, especially for the airport, to continue with its operations. And you can see some of those military officers. The ones you're seeing here are the ones who are actually outside the gate, and there's a bigger number out there. And these are service officers, of course, coming in to ensure that they're also part and parcel of these. The vehicles that are going to actually carry the remains of Odinga are actually going into the runway now to get ready. These are some of the officers who will be manning the casket that will be carrying Odinga's remains. We've seen these with the deaths of senior government officials, General Gola. We saw it with the president, the late Mwai Kibaki. We saw it with the funeral service of the late second president, Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. And it is what the president said yesterday, that he will be accorded all the honors that are deserved for this stature, or this kind of a person that was Raila Odinga.
Finally, do we know if there are any roads that are closed? Because judging from that procession, it seems they are going to march all the way from JKIA to Lee Funeral Home. Have the roads been closed? Have there been any notifications of a closure of the roads?
We haven't received any communication from the police because it was quite smooth coming in with the expressway, of course, with the other roads still open. But we expect that there could be some temporary change to traffic and how everything will be happening. I've just seen a security or a military officer carrying the flag. I believe this will be the flag that will be draping that casket that will be touching down in just about a few minutes, because we have seen that team leave at around 3:30 thereabout a.m. From Mumbai, India, and it will be touching down according to plan in the next hour, because we expect that it should be touching down at 8:30 a.m. Trevor.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Judging from the tracking that we're doing live of the plane, it might be landing there at around 9:30. That's about an hour later from the scheduled time. Initially, it was 8:30. Now it might land at 9:30. But that is Emmanuel speaking to us live from the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Like he says, these are events that are happening in real time. It's a state funeral. That's why you see the gun carriage there. You see the military parade also there. You see the military band just getting ready to ferry the remains of the late Honorable Raila Odinga all the way from JKIA Street to the Lee Funeral Home. From there, they're scheduled to get there at around 10 a.m., but that will change by about an hour or so, considering the landing time has now changed from 8:30 to 9:30, and then right after that, the body will be taken to the National Assembly and the Parliament precincts for public viewing. We'll give you updates on that. The government, through Professor Kithure Kindiki, who is actually the person chairing the funeral committee, said that there will be designated spots for viewing of the proceedings live. They had to establish exactly where those spots will be, because they know that most people will not make it to the National Assembly where the public viewing will be happening. But also, coming into our studios right now is that Friday has now been declared a public holiday. That is also the day that there will be a state funeral in honor of the late former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. And then on Saturday, it will be the public viewing will be happening in Kisumu at the Moi Stadium. And then on Sunday is the official burial date. My guests are still with me here in studio, Willis Otieno, Deputy Party Leader, and Dan Manzo, Senator for Makueni. And Senator, before I went to JKIA, we were talking about this issue of whether you think that decision was the right one. Because Raila Odinga has been the one person who's made decisions that not everybody agrees with, despite the fact that even the idea of you not agreeing with him was his creation to begin with, because he's the one who created those, enabled the freedoms of expression. But you were talking about joining of the broad-based government. Was that a good move?
Well, it was an act of courage and an act of wisdom. At that moment, President Ruto had dissolved his government. Cabinet ministers had been sent packing in accordance to the request by the agencies. And it was a time to reform the country. And President Ruto now had opened up that political space, meaning President Ruto had admitted that his government had failed the people. Wrong decisions had been made. There were very many complaints about his cabinet ministers and permanent secretaries. And clearly, you know, the country was at crossroads. And at that moment, if we had continued the same gear, it means then there was going to be total collapse of government, and Kenyans would have overrun the Constitution. And you see, the Constitution provides that the only way you can remove a president is through elections, other than, you know, by demise or things provided in the Constitution. And at that particular moment, to me, he made a very important decision to hold the country together up to the time when the Constitution reapplies again in 2027. And even a few days before he went for treatment, he had made it clear to Manzoni that ODM could be having a presidential candidate in 2027. And therefore, he modeled and gave direction as to what they are doing in the broad-based government. So I think at that particular moment, the country was held together. That was necessary. Of course, the opposition was disfigured, and the original arrangement of government be checked. The government had already been overchecked, even by the people, and that's why that particular decision, to me, was very courageous. Not everybody would have agreed with it, but it was a necessity to make sure that the nation survives up to 2027. And he went on to give, experts and people with experience in public management to become ministers. The Honorable Bandi now went to Treasury. Honorable Bandi has been for many years in the committee dealing with the Treasury and oversight in Treasury. He has even chaired it at one time. He was a minority leader, and now he had been, to Parliament. The same thing with Hassan Joho, who has got quite some experience and in terms of mobilizing the coastal region. And you could see all those, the cabinet secretary for energy, all those people came in with the new energy, and the government was somehow stabilized. So although Kenyans have not been fully, satisfied with what is happening, at least they have a chance to wait for an election, other than letting things loose or fanning, the destruction of the nation or over-reformation. Yeah. And I think for that, Raila Odinga has done well for Kenya. And this was in accordance, with the people's will and many people's wishes that the country become stable. Businessmen were suffering. Okay. And we were beginning to lose tourists into the country out of the chaos which was going on. And therefore, that really helped the nation. Okay.
Can we listen into what's going on at the JKIA? We can see there's a lot of people there, members of the public, who have just gotten to the JKIA, and also we've seen the gun carriage move into position just a short while ago. We'll take you, those are live pictures from JKIA. We'll go there in just a bit just to give you the mood and to show you what's going on there. We're expecting the body of the late Honorable Raila Odinga to touch down at around 9:30. Initially, it was scheduled for 8:30, but that time was revised to 9:30. Based on the tracking that we're doing, we'll see if there are any changes. If there are any changes in terms of arrival time, we'll give you an update of this. We also know that tomorrow is now a public holiday. Let me bring in Willis on this same conversation that we're having. Willis, was that the right move? You said that Raila Odinga always had a cause. He was always fighting for a cause, and it was always about the people. That last move before his demise has drawn a lot of varied reactions. Was it the right move in hindsight?
In hindsight, it's difficult at this point to say it was the right move or the wrong move. And I say that with tremendous respect to Raila Odinga. Because on one hand, you have a population that has decided to deal with a political administration that is not responsive to their needs. And on the other hand, you have a Raila Odinga who has been the champion of the people's cause, being called upon to stabilize that administration. I did not have all the full facts that Raila had at his doorstep at the time of making this decision, But it is one move that I will say, for the first time, it put Raila Odinga on a direct confrontation with his constituents, to the extent that he was always the one who you can say captured the aspirations of the people. In fact, if you remember when the Gen Z started their demonstration, there was one very telling statement from a young lady that they only addressed one politician. They didn't address the others. And they only told him, Raila, Baba, let us finish this one. Just keep off. We are going to do it for you. They didn't care about any other political leader. Because it tells you that even them, as they were going out to agitate, they only recognized him as the only leader that maybe they could have come to talk to them out of it or joined them. It was a recognition of his special role in agitating for the people. But then, at the penultimate stage of that revolution, Raila Odinga again has to now answer the question, to respond to the call that, okay, this is going to happen, but there's no clear roadmap on a transition. What do you do? I may not be an expert in Raila Odinga, but I can say this. I do believe that this joining of the broad-based is one decision that was weighing very heavily on his head, even in his final days, as to whether he moved deep into the administration or he moved far away from the people. And if you look at his, in the recent past, some of the statements he has made, saying that ODM will stand up presidential candidates, our commitment was only up to the next elections. It tells you that he was alive to the public sentiments in relation to joining the broad-based government, so that he was leaving a window to explain to the people that maybe this was necessary at the time. Circumstances made it that I had to now deal with an administration that I do understand you didn't believe in, but we had to do it for the country and to preserve this date, to have an election, to do away with it. But unfortunately for him, he left the people without having that conversation. So we can only but speculate. I will not wish to find myself in a situation that Raila Odinga found himself in relation to what was happening last year and the pressure, to, as Panzo says, to stabilize the nation. And you can imagine how many phone calls were coming through, how many entreaties, not just in Kenya. I do believe even from international quarters, people putting pressure on him to bear. So for the first time, you're being told to move slightly away from that which you represent. You are the people's president. Now you need to stabilize the state president in readiness for a more organized transition, as opposed to a people-led process. But the jury is out there. We cannot judge Raila Odinga based on one act that happened on broad-based and ignore the long history of struggle that started from, in my view, I say always 1982 to date, the contribution that he made. Those far much outweigh, in my view, his broad-based arrangement.
What for you was the most significant moment in history for Raila Odinga politically? We're still talking about the lessons that politicians can learn.
For me, the most significant moment in history, I will say two, but the main one to me was 30th of January, 2018. To see a people in their hundreds of thousands congregate right in the middle of the city, not in some corner or some backward village in the fringes, but right in the middle of the city, barely 3 kilometers from State House. And Raila Odinga courageously carries a Bible, walks in there courageously, carries a Bible, and he says, I'm going to assign to the office of the people's president. I mean, I was with him in the run-up to that swearing in. We had to postpone even because we had planned to do a private ceremony before. And even some of the principals of NASA, just even to appear at the private ceremony, they were scared. It was scary. You don't know how the state was going to react. And that's a private ceremony. The public will now forget about it. They didn't appear. But it tells you that it was not an easy decision to make, because you are going to now show open defiance to the state that has engaged in acts of manipulating the vote, stifling the voice of the people. And we are going to do it right in the middle of the city, barely 3 kilometers from the gates of State House. And if you recall, in the run-up to that swearing in, I remember there was a meeting, I think the last meeting that Raila had at somewhere in Homa Bay. And he spoke deeply in Luo, that if I must die for the nation to be free, I have accepted my destiny. I'm going to take the oath. If death becomes my reward, I accept it. It was a very deep Luo conversation. He was speaking to his people. In fact, in a way telling them, goodbye. It is imminent death, but I'm going to embrace my death. And Raila comes to Uhuru Park and takes that oath courageously in broad daylight and walks away. In a way, in my view, he gave the people their voice. He made people to recognize that power resides in us, that we can actually challenge an administration. Many Kenyans may not recognize it, but I do believe even the Gen Z revolution, part of where it draws its inspiration to challenge the administration like they are doing, draws from the events of 30th of January. That we have seen a precedent where we can actually take on an administration and try to establish our own people's administration. So Raila was the godfather of Gen Z, if you ask me.
Okay.
Only that at some point, when the godfather was told to stay at home, they'll finish the job for him, godfather succumbed to pressure from certain quarters to compromise. But to me, 30th of January
was the most significant.
Most significant. And being there, electric. Trevor, I was in the crowd. If you saw what was at Uhuru Park and the threat of the state, and that threat was not just a hollow threat. They had killed. People had been killed in the run-up, in the demonstrations. Part of what had happened when Raila was coming back from the UK, and his national supporters were receiving him from the airport. The drive from the airport, JKIA, to NHIF then, just before Uhuru Park, it took almost 4 hours, and people died. So when the state said that we are going to respond, there will be no gathering at Uhuru Park, and the then Attorney General publicly said, any oath that is administered is an act of treason. Treason punishable by death through hanging on the neck until you die. That is the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya issuing a public warning before the event. Then it bestows upon Raila Odinga to dare the state and take that oath.
So this was happening simultaneously.
Yes.
Real imminent danger and threat, and a charged electric crowd staying the course.
Stayed the course. He did not falter. And you can imagine from across even the globe, presidents were calling him, both in Africa and even Europe and the Western Hemisphere. They were calling him, telling him, don't do it. Don't appear. You are going to mess your legacy. Don't go to Uhuru Park. Some even offering him positions to let it go. For me, to see him stand up and say, I'm going to give the people of Kenya their voice, elections must count, and if it doesn't count, the people have an avenue outside of those elections to assert their will. I believe that is the most significant, in my experience with him.
Manzo, what was the most significant moment for you politically, in the political journey?
Yes, I want to also talk about this particularly swearing in and the events before and the events after. First, you know, the other core principles, including his running mate, His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka.
Who's the party leader?
He was my party leader, the party leader of Wiper Patriotic Front. Had been, you know, his home had been condoned, you know, surrounded a day before, and all security withdrawn, and even, you know, something thrown into his home, which a grenade, actually. A grenade was thrown into his home, probably to scare him. And luckily for Raila Odinga, did not, they were not able to catch up with him or trace his whereabouts. And I remember that morning they were to meet somewhere. That meet is talking about, and later on go to the swearing in. So our teams went to Uhuru Park, which was full. And in fact, the security people who were there that morning, I really want to thank President Uhuru for that, they left, because it was going to be very chaotic. In fact, you cannot beat the people. These were close to 200,000 people. They have filled Uhuru Park and they are waiting, you know, for for Raila Odinga for the swearing, and you know, TJ Kajwang was there, you know, dressed up, you know, in the lawyers, and he was to be part of the team and administering the oath. Later on, he was charged, and we were to go and you know, deal with that situation for administering an illegal oath in Ngong law courts for months. Eventually, he was acquitted. And this particular event forced the government of the day, you know, now to agree to go into a coalition, because now there was a people's president, and there were several things which were going to follow. We had all of us removed the effigy for the president in our offices, or kept it down, and in all the shops in Raila commanded areas, which were many in the country. And now we had abandoned you know, Safaricom. And then we were not going to pay taxes to the country. So definitely the government in power then was powerless without the people. Remember, it had been a stolen election. And the courts had even declared so. And therefore, this really, you know, was a telling moment now that it's like we have two governments in power. And still people were moving to this particular place. And as the other principals tried to catch up with him, this event took about 10 minutes. And by the time they arrived, they found the crowd was celebrating and, you know, moving. So this tells the power of the people. In fact, I want to say that, you know, he had gone around the country. And everywhere he went, he was told by the people, we must swear you. You know, it was really not of his own making as such. Yeah. It was a lot of pressure from the people. And everywhere, and now he had to live, you know, to the wishes of the people at whatever cost it will be. And I remember after this promise had been made, you know, to the people, and he had been pushed to be sworn. He had to agree to be sworn as the people had said. And I want to say that is an act of courage. Yeah. It defines Kenya's history. For the first time, you know, the security forces found that they were not able to control this. They were not able to use force anymore. They were not able to do further killings. And there was every likelihood of provocation. In fact, the people were saying after the swearing in, we should march to State House. And you know what crisis that would have caused. And therefore, it forced even a handshake, and things went differently. Because one of the biggest things Raila Odinga fought for was lack of equal opportunities for Kenyans. Whoever forms government, and that behavior is still there today, wants to develop or do projects for those who are supporting the president. And the regions which seem to be opposition, they are abandoned, even from the national budget. And you know that will continue isolating some parts of the country and making sure that they don't get development. Therefore, the other defining moment is that Raila Odinga is actually the father of devolution. And the devolution made sure that you know, whether you are in government or in opposition, the governor at least has something to do or can develop different counties. And you know, he has fought for devolution from the time it started up to today. He was really, you know, very active and following. You know, even his last address to Senate was to make sure that Senate, you know, defends devolution and monies puts pressure for monies to arrive in devolved units in good time. Because a lot of time we have devolution, the monies don't get there in good time, and they only come the last month of closure of financial year. Only yellow papers get to the county, and the money never gets to the county, and the financial cycle begins again, and very little development goes to the county. So he also stood for devolution, and he was a memory. You know, I'm hoping that his memoirs have been written. He had a lot of stories to tell. You know, every time we met him when we had political party or coalition retreats in Naivasha, and you listen to him for an hour. and you pick a lot of Kenya's history. You pick the struggles. You are able to learn. So I believe there should be some library of some sort with all the tapes, with all the speeches, because young Kenyans, the young ones, the Gen Zs, need to learn that they are not the beginners of struggles. These struggles have been there since 1982, and they need to know, how it has been happening and how it has worked. So there is a lot he leaves to the country, and he has inspired a lot of people not to be intimidated into, accepting the way the government wants things to be done. You may accuse him of almost every time he makes compromises of, almost going back to one-party system, which he fought. Because when you form these coalition, these governments of broad base and national unity and all that, you water down the opposition in the House, and you find now everything which the state wants to do just goes on, and we are almost like in a one-party situation. But he was very clear in his last moments with his political party at Manzoni. He said, look, we have a purpose. And even the conditions he had given the current government to improve on, he had said compensate those who have been killed. And you see, when you have to go back into that, it's a big history. You need up to when do you go back for those who have been killed by the brutality of police or the state up to today, and kidnappings and abductions and all those things. There's a lot of work to be done there, and you can see he was still following up that. Although the 10-point agenda did not seem to be achieved at all, you could see that he's making an effort, at least for families whose children have been abducted or killed, be compensated and get justice, for what had happened to them. So I believe this is part of Kenya's history, something you can never delete when Kenya's history is written and when books are written. And we really want him, to be honored by Kenyans, but more important, to pick lessons, from his political life and what he stood for, and that Kenyans continue. So that the Raila ideology of justice, equal opportunities to all Kenyans and the right to political rights carries on into the future.
Okay. We're keeping an eye on almost all events, actually, starting from the one you're seeing on your screen right now. That's a real-time flight tracker of the flight carrying the remains of the late Honorable Raila Odinga. It's just overflying around Somalia, if you could see that clearly there. So it's expected to land here at around 9:30. Initially, it was supposed to be at 8:30. We can see earlier on at the JKIA that the military gun carriage is already in place with military precision as always. We're still waiting for the touchdown. As soon as it happens, then the body will be loaded to the military gun carriage, and then that gun carriage will head to what you're seeing on your screen right now, which is the National Assembly precincts, that is Parliament, right after passing through the Lee Funeral Home, or that program could change as well. So we're keeping an eye, and things might change in real time, because it was the body was supposed to arrive at the Lee Funeral Home at 10 and then head to the Parliament precincts from around midday. Because of that flight difference in time, the program might change, but we're keeping an eye on all those events happening in real time. On your right there, you can see the Parliament precincts preparations ongoing. The flight tracking is happening on the left side of the screen. In real time, the flight is just around Somalia area, heading into the JKIA. The military gun carriage is already in place. The military band is already in place. There are quite a number, thousands of people within the JKIA precincts and outside, as Emmanuel Toh was also telling us earlier on. That is right inside Parliament, just by the entrance, as they're getting ready to receive the body of the late Honorable Raila Odinga. This is a state funeral, so you'll see all the state honors being carried out. That's why it's being run by the military. You can see the public viewing will be done. You remember this from the late former president's burial as well. That's exactly what's going on your screen there. We'll keep you updated. As soon as anything changes, we'll let you know. Friday is now declared a public holiday. That is the same day that there will also be a viewing of the late Prime Minister Raila Odinga's body. Now, so let me bring in Willis back into this conversation. So that's the conversation on the lessons for the politicians. What about leaders and Kenyans in general, especially on the magnanimity of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga? We've seen situations where differences causes almost lifeline enmity within Kenyans themselves and some leaders as well. Now, Raila Odinga was not that type. In fact, he somehow reconciled with all his sworn political nemesis, so to speak. What lessons can the people learn from that, especially when it comes to dealing with political differences?
In fact, it's good that you've put it. Who was Raila Odinga's enemy? I'll struggle to point out, because I don't know anybody that, in my view, you could say that Raila held as an enemy. Moi detained him for 9 years. Detention without trial for 9 years. But he put aside that personal pain and sacrifice, and for the sake of the nation, he chose to find a way in which we work together. Kibaki, they fought over his stolen victory in 2007, and he put that aside. Uhuru Kenyatta, again, the same thing. Stolen victory in 2013, 2017 that led to the people's swearing in. So, and it goes on. So for me, the lesson to our people, generally, that I draw from that is that this was a man who, at the end of the day, in terms of politics, he believed that there's nothing to make us enemies. All that we are all looking for is about the common good, and not that we are in combat. In other countries, if we had somebody who had the influence and the stature of Raila Odinga and disagrees on a political quest with their competition, I believe people will be carrying machetes and guns, going to war directly. That is how you find some countries, you have rebel groups fighting for their liberation. So to me, the lesson is that we must always look out for the common good, look out for the good. Despite our differences, it's all a quest towards achieving the best for everyone, not just a few. And something else about Raila Odinga, if you look at a lesson that I draw, look at his relationship with his family. I mean, Raila never hid the fact that he loved his wife, he loved his children, and he always involved them. He always had time for his grandchildren, and he would spend time with them. In fact, if you found him with his grandchildren, you'll ask yourself, is this really Raila Odinga? At the end of the day, he was just a man who wanted to spend time with his family and also to enjoy the love and warmth, comfort that family gives. So he always had that. Something about Raila again that many people don't talk about, even his philanthropy, as opposed to many politicians. Raila never advertised his interventions for people. I do remember there was a time a client came to my office. The father had been detained way back in 1980s with Raila Odinga. And so she tells me that the father died, was detained, lost his job, he was a member of the Air Force, that they want to seek compensation. And I told her, but you don't have any evidence. There's no material you can give me. And the only evidence I have is Raila Odinga. so I asked her, call Raila Odinga and tell him to... Then I can't call him, I have not seen him for some time, maybe I'll book an appointment. So I picked my phone and called Raila Odinga in the presence of the client that, okay, and he picked the phone. So I asked him, okay, I have this friend of mine who says you are detained with a father. Are you able to be our witness to help us go to court? And he recalled, these things happened in the 1980s. He said, yes, I remember the man very well. He was my very good friend. In fact, I will be the witness. I will just come and meet me. I will do for you an affidavit to narrate everything that we went through. Where we detained, I can still remember. In fact, I think I even have some documents that may help to corroborate what I'm saying. I mean, if these events happened in the 1980s, and here you have Raila Odinga, some poor little girl coming to say, I want justice for my father, and Raila Odinga offers himself, just on a phone call, without even us having a formal meeting, that I will help you, I will help that young poor girl to get justice for the father, if you can find a way of taking this thing to court. So he was somebody who, whenever he did things for others, at a personal level, he never advertised. You'll never find a camera right behind him when he's paying school fees, when he's assisting people, even just referral letters alone, that will help someone to pursue. So that is who Raila was. Publicly, on issues that affect all of us, very public, very bold, very courageous. Privately, on issues that affect private individuals, very private, and he whenever he intervened, he left it at that. He never used as a platform to gain political mileage. That, again, was another lesson about Raila Odinga. And the sad thing, when I look at the KQ flight, it reminds me of a Luo saying, the worth, the bore, the search, the duogo. The journey is long when you're coming back. This is going to be a long journey today for my friend Winnie. It's not easy. I know how Raila related with his daughter, having worked together with them in NASA in 2017 as the campaign manager. He doted on Winnie. And to be in a situation where now you went out hoping that all will be well, now she has to come back carrying the body of the father. It's painful, and I just pray that Kenyans have Winnie in their prayers, Junior and Rosemary. It's going to be a long journey, but at least we celebrate the contribution that their father has made in our democratization process.
Okay. We're keeping an eye on the events live right now. On your screen, you can see the JKIA live, and also on the upper side, you can see the real-time flight tracker. One of the most tracked, in fact, it's the #1 tracked flight as we speak. It's somewhere around Somalia airspace right now on its way to the JKIA. On the lower side, you can see that was earlier when the first committee got there. That is Maurice Ogeta and also Pio Wandai. Maurice Ogeta is the former Prime Minister's bodyguard, and he was there at the time. And you can also see the casket carrying the remains of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga draped in the Kenyan flag. In JKIA, earlier on, Emmanuel Toward showed us there was a military personnel carrying a flag as well. We believe that's the same flag that is going to be used to drape the casket carrying the remains of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. The gun carriage is in place. The plan is to move the body from, at least the initial plan was to move the body from JKIA to Lee Funeral Home, then back to the pressing of Parliament for a public viewing. That was supposed to happen between 10 and 12 p.m. If that changes, we will let you know. And the flight track is also in real time. We're refreshing it to give you a chance to know exactly where the flight is. Right now, it's within the Somalia airspace. We're also tracking events in Kisumu, in Bondo, and across the country. Still a wall-to-wall coverage on day 2 of the demise of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, a man who has been described as Enigma, Baba, Jacom, and also let's bring in now Manzo on this. Manzo, we're talking about the magnanimity of the person that Raila Odinga is, especially in the political field, where most people, if they're sworn enemies as politicians, they don't see eye to eye. It is very difficult for them to reconcile. But we saw Raila Odinga almost reconciling with almost everyone who he had a bit of a tiff with, politically, so to speak. What kind of lessons can other leaders and also Kenyans draw from this political space that you people are in?
Yes, and let me say that Raila Odinga was able to forgive. And you know, when you forgive somebody who has wronged you, you lift the burden from you. You become free. And then after forgiving, he was able to reconcile. And after reconciliation, he will then tolerate that particular person. And that's how he was able to work with Moi, who had, locked him up. For somebody who locks you up for 9 months, honestly, for you to talk to them again, then you must have really forgiven them and then reconciled. And you could also tolerate, be with them. And that he did with Moi. Then he did with Mwai Kibaki. Then he did that with Uhuru Kenyatta. And I want also to tell you that after the 2007 events, and when he was, Prime Minister and His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka was Vice President, that time, there was a lot of pull. There was a lot of pull between them and competition. It was very competitive because they all looked forward to lead the nation after Mwai Kibaki. And then they were able to come together in 2012, form CORD, and work together. And you can see the sacrifices both of them made for each other. And I know that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga and His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka then, worked together very closely. Then 2017, they worked together with a lot of challenges. 2022, after that, they had gone to Maandamano together, very risky affair. With the bullets flying all over, and almost losing their lives. And then eventually he goes on to salvage the current government, which he believed had stolen his vote. And for the sake of the nation, decides let the nation stretch to 2027, then people can sit down and review. I think that was very, telling, and it's a big lesson for politicians to learn, that you cannot be, enemies forever. And for the benefit of the nation, you can come together. But that does not mean you compromise the opposition. You remember his lieutenants in his government, the senator from Nairobi, Sifuna, Honorable Sifuna, and Babu Owino. They soldiered with a normal cause. They said it is okay, there is broad-based, but I'm sorry, when the government measures up, we must speak, even if we are in ODM. And he didn't go on to fight them. Raila Odinga didn't really fight Babu Owino with his cause. No, he did not fight Sifuna and many others in his coalition. I know Oundo, Honorable Oundo, kept the mind of the opposition. And they did not, use the normal channels of the political party to whip them differently. No. It's like sort of ODM now was divided into two. The ODM supportive, broad-based, and the ODM still in opposition. Yeah. And you could see he tolerated with both that and allowed it to go on. And you see, he will also himself, challenge the government from inside and give ultimatums. He said, stop the kidnappings. When he was running for the African Union, he went to South Africa, got a little bit challenged, and when he came back to Kenya, he said these kidnappings must stop. And President Ruto promised in an event in Nyanza that the kidnappings are going to stop and all people who are lost or kidnapped are going to be released. And that tells you what he stood for, that despite supporting the broad-based government, he did not support the evils the broad-based government was doing to the people. He still fought it and made sure that those kidnappings and killings are reduced, to a very great extent. Although the truth of the matter is, up to now, kidnappings are still happening, but quietly. People are still being followed up. And they disappear and finally found dead, and then the reports you find at city mortuary is that they've died of road accidents, which is not true. So there is a lot of work to be done, despite the absence of Raila Odinga. And this is a time now the opposition should even be stronger to make sure that the current government is checked properly, and especially that human rights are not abused anymore. Because killings of that nature leave the victims without a channel for justice or compensation, especially when it is concealed and the wrong reports are given. It means then that person has no chance, to get justice, even to the compensation commissions set up by both the opposition and the government. The opposition as the People's Restorative Justice Commission, chaired by Honorable Justin Muturi, the former Speaker and the former AG, and the former Cabinet Secretary. And then one of the commissioners there, among other minds, legal minds, who are working on that. But at the same time, a parallel one was set up by the government, where the chair of the Law Society dropped out, following the demands by Kenyans. And I remember Raila Odinga personally campaigned for that chair of Law Society that time, and convinced, lawyers that should be there for the conscience of Kenyans, and that the Law Society is an important body to make sure that the government is checked and justice is done in the courts, and a lot of lawyers volunteering to assist with abductions, and still following, the case of Bob Jagi, who is in a foreign country now, and the current government is accused of doing very little. I am very sure if Raila Odinga was well and kicking, Bob Jagi and his friends wouldn't be back to Kenya now, and I believe they're still going to come to Kenya because their safety has already, and wherever they are is now known, and something is going on to make sure that they are brought back to Kenya. And I believe in the country they are, Uganda, President Museveni is also a forgiving person. He reconciles with the people. and he does restoration. And despite whatever had happened, I'm sure these good Kenyans are going to come back to the country. And I believe many presidents are going to come for his interment on Sunday. I'm sure they're going to visit and come, and most probably I'm hoping that President Yoweri Museveni will come, and will come back with Bob Jaggi and the rest of the team which are stuck in Uganda.
All right. Live pictures there from the Lee Funeral Home. Now we can see that on the top side, and also the live tracking of the flight carrying the remains of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Now, there's going to be a public viewing at the National Assembly or Parliament precincts as soon as the flight lands. The remains will be taken to the Lee Funeral Home, which you're seeing there. That area is now being taken care of by the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism, Rebecca Miano. She's the one in charge of operations there for now, because this is a state funeral, like you mentioned, and there are several groups that are handling the final rites of the late Honorable Raila Odinga. There's the team that is led by the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, and also the minority and majority leaders of the National Assembly. They are the ones in the flight. The number of host dignitaries who are also on the way back. That team there's also another complementary team that is headed by the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, and Oburu Oginga, who's Raila Odinga's elder brother. And then there's the team that is handling the logistics as well on the ground, right, led by CS Rebecca Miano, the tourism CS at the Lee Funeral Home right now as we speak. It's expected that the moment they lands, the remains of the late Raila Odinga lands in JKIA, it will be taken to the Lee Funeral Home. We are seeing the pictures right now. And then it will be brought back to Parliament, where there'll be a public viewing there. It was supposed to start from 12 all the way to around 5 p.m. but probably it will be extended because of the difference in flight landing time, expected time of arrival. It was supposed to be 8:30, which is about 30 minutes from now, but we've been informed that it might land at around 9:30. And we're seeing the live tracking there right now is within the Somalia airspace. But let me bring back Willis into this conversation. Willis, so what is the impact of Raila Odinga's loss in the political field? Because there are many people who've said that when a big tree falls, the birds scatter. But there are also those who say that sometimes that loss will unite the troops.
In my view, the impact of Raila Odinga's loss, his absence, is phenomenal. Because you're talking of a giant who has shaped all our political conversations for the last 30 years. Nobody will sit discussing national politics without factoring in Raila, either for or against. Many people in Kenya today owe their positions largely to discussing Raila. Raila is our political manifesto. Either you're campaigning against him or turning him to be the head figure of that election or showing you adoration. So it's going to be a phenomenal shift in our national politics, even local politics in certain areas.
Right from the top.
Right from the top. Right from the top. In fact, the one who I will tell to him, Olewako, at the topmost is William Ruto. Because Raila Odinga was the guarantor of his stability, as Manzo says. He's the one who had been able to hold at bay the generation that was pushing for his ouster. And I believe that even part of the peace that he's been surviving of is just because of out of respect for Raila, or the influence that Raila has to a very significant extent within the country. So with the absence of that godfather, Olewake, I don't know who will hold his ship. That is number one. Number two, to those politicians whose campaign slogan has always been that we are going to help Baba nationally. They are facing a serious challenge. There is no Baba to help nationally. You'll have to redefine your politics. To those who their campaign platforms have always been how much they can abuse Raila, make him the hate figure of that election. There is no Raila that you're going to hate. There is no Raila to abuse. Now you must address your people on substance. So it affects the entire spectrum. And the constituencies that are affected are large constituencies. They're talking of national, and even if it's local, certain regions that are densely populated, high vote-rich areas, where people either it's for Raila or against Raila, and they still use Raila. So we are going to see a tectonic shift in our politics. I cannot tell you how it will play out. I can only, in a way, recognize that there is indeed going to be a shift based on the vacuum caused by the absence of the enigma. He was not just an enigma by word, he was an enigma by deed. And there's nobody in Kenya today that has achieved the stature akin to the one Raila had achieved. Nobody has risen to that level. You know, sometimes when people look at Raila Odinga, people assume that Raila's strength was to become a president. I do believe that Raila was maybe never meant to be a president. He was meant to be beyond that official structure called a president. Because presidents come here and go. Moi was president for 24 years, served his term, retired into oblivion. Moi didn't shape any political discourse in Kenya post his retirement. Kibaki the same, served for 10 years, finished his term, didn't shape the politics beyond his retirement. Uhuru Kenyatta served, has retired, almost in oblivion. Occasionally you'll see him appear. But Raila Odinga, an individual who's never sat on that in that office, but has in a way controlled and influenced all the political happenings. People all organize around Raila Odinga. So maybe he was never meant to be that state president. He was meant to be the people's president. And in every, or in certain, let me say, in certain unique circumstances, nations find themselves with an individual whose stature cannot be constricted in a formal office. They've acquired a supernatural structure, image, that you cannot confine them to an individual office as the basis of their legitimacy. Raila Odinga was one such person. His stature had moved beyond an office. And his voice, as a voice, was a voice that could shape even how those offices are going to be formed, are going to be occupied. Okay. In the absence of that voice, there's going to be a gap that nobody in Kenya at this point can fill the gap, the shoes of Raila Odinga. I don't even think you may ever find somebody who can play that role, because you must start with 9 years in detention for you to fill Raila Odinga's role. Nobody's going to detain anybody for 9 years.
So is that by nature, design, or just by stature of the person that he was?
I believe it's by...
There's been many analyses around it.
I believe it's by...
Did he groom people? Did he not groom people? There's been a lot of conversation around that. So is it by design, by nature, or just by principle of the person that Raila Odinga was?
And let me say this. I don't fault Raila Odinga for not grooming anybody.
But is it really true that he didn't groom it?
I was going to come to that. In fact, I'm going to say this. People expect Raila Odinga to stand up and tell us that this is my preferred choice. It doesn't happen that way. What Raila Odinga did was to provide a platform to so many Kenyans. So many. In fact, if you go to the Raila Odinga Academy, those who've passed through his hands, I mean, we are more than 50,000. So many.
Almost all the politicians passed by.
You can talk about. So the question will be, because you'll find the next leadership, even the person who's going to try to fill that gap, will come from that academy. What Raila did was to give us, and many Kenyans for that matter, a platform. Learn from his table. Learn from his ways. I am privileged to have, in 2017, 2018, spent a lot of time with Raila Odinga as his campaign manager. In fact, from April 2017 up to around December, there was no day Raila Odinga was in town and I was not at his house in the morning. That to me was grooming. That was tutoring, mentorship. Whatever I learned from there, we'll see how I play it out. And others, there are many others. Some he gave positions. There are so many governors who owe their positions Raila Odinga. There are so many cabinet secretaries. There are so many members of parliament, members of county assemblies. They learned something from him. How they'll play it out is now upon them. But I don't believe it was for Raila to say, I choose Manzo. No. What Raila had to do was to simply provide Manzo with a platform, access, learn from my feet. We learned from his feet. Those who will live according to his ideals, those who will show an aspiration towards what Raila stood for, then a leader will emerge. So there's no vacuum. The king did his part. He was Father Abraham. Raila was the real Father Abraham, with many sons and daughters. He later on transcends to become a Moses when we thought he was Joshua, but he was actually then Moses. Having seen the promised land, having shown us the constitution, given the Kenyan people a tool that they can use to actualize the ultimate freedom. And the ultimate freedom, I always say, is economic freedom.
Okay.
We have the tool of our constitution that guarantees our political rights, the right to agitate, the right to hold our leaders to account. Now you can use that tool to fight for economic liberation. Let leaders account for you. Come up with policies that impact your lives positively as a people.
Okay.
Him, when he started in 1982, even having a meeting, the basic tools to even agitate were not there. Having a meeting was not there. You could have to get a permit. You could be detained without trial. You could even be tortured. There was what we are calling, even when you are taken through a trial process, you could actually be sentenced to hard labor. That you are told to now you are going to do hard labor in prison. So the state is actually using its formal instruments to torture you. That is succumbed.
Okay. Manzo, what will be the impact of Raila Odinga's loss in the political field?
The impact is great. And you can see from where he started, the history. You know, it's very painful to be detained without a trial. And he made sure that didn't happen again to any other Kenyan. You know, be detained without a trial means the government knows, the government of the day knows, if they take you through a trial, you're going to be acquitted because you have not committed an offense known by law. And then after that, you have to live in exile. You would imagine what his family has gone through in the years, his absence. And when he comes back, he's able to forgive, reconcile, and tolerate. And then he moves on now to build a very, strong political party and strong coalitions. You see, politics are run through political parties. And it teaches very many people how to do it. So the moment is not there, first and foremost, I really want to urge his followers and his party members and his coalition partners, first of all, to remember his last words politically, that he gave direction. He already given direction, what should happen. And I will expect no wrangles. For example, when he was running for African Union, he had left Professor Anyang' Nyong'o in charge. He had left him in charge. The Governor Orengo is also a very strong member. And in fact, those two believe in what Raila believed. Both of them fought for change, fought for reforms, and I've been with him, ever since. So they understand. And I believe the spirit should live on within ODM and within the coalition partners of change, for a better Kenya, for equal opportunities, for equal distribution, of resources available, for fight against corruption, where this is where Kenya is sinking. Because Kenya has a lot of money. It has borrowed heavily, but all the monies have been mismanaged. And unless you have strong parliament and strong structures to make sure that the money serve the people, there's always likely to be a problem. Because you have governments in power who are only keen to come back, but they are not keen to serve the people, and keen to make too many promises which they don't keep, and keep on launching projects which they don't start or they don't complete, and even not completing the existing projects like Vision 2030, which was highly, steered by the late Raila Odinga. And therefore, there are many people who are going to suffer and to lose politically, because a lot of them hanged on his coats to survive, either supporting him or against him. There are people, the only reason they were elected was because they hated, they propagated hate against Raila Odinga. And for that reason, they were elected to power. And then there are for those, for supporting Raila and supporting change, they were also elected. So some of them now have to find. They have to go back to the people. They have to find their way, because they only, and so quite a number of them are very sad and shocked, and are finding themselves now without a political future.
Give us a sneak peek of the kind of conversations you're having in your groups, in your political circles. What are they saying?
First of all, Kenya is shocked, and politicians are shocked by the death of Raila Odinga. Nobody really expected it this way. From Oburu Odinga, from the family's speeches, there was a lot of hope that although he was unwell, he was going to be back. And everybody was waiting for him to be back. I mean, he was in communication with quite a number of people. You know, in Senate, I sit next to Oburu Odinga, and he's my friend. He was equally shocked, you know, like any other Kenyan. And many politicians now in parliament, they are in shock. They're in low tones. Some are confused. They don't know now what will happen. They don't know what to champion. It's really tough for many Kenyans. And you see, one of the reasons Raila Odinga and ODM were successful, they had huge numbers in the House. So I expect a smooth succession, and I expect ODM to find a leader quickly who will continue working with other like-minded Kenyans who want change and reforms and a better life for Kenyans. You know, education, you know his position on education, his position on taxes, his position on corruption, and his position on devolution and institutions within government. The judiciary, EACC, the presidency, parliament, you know, all these. And that's why you are seeing, you know, everybody is there to give help in one way or another, or to be part of the goodwill, to see him get a decent send-off. Therefore, you know, a lot of people don't know what to do in terms of how they're going to position themselves in ODM or in the coalition. This is going to affect politics in a big way. I believe one of the biggest casualties of Raila's demise is William Ruto. This was the guarantor of his government. He was the one keeping things holding together. And probably we need to come up with you know, somebody who carries on that dream and make sure that beyond 2027, Kenya is, you know, secure, and Kenya goes through an election smoothly, and the results of the elections are expected. So there is a heavy burden, and you remember his last words to IBC. He expected IBC now to own up, and his expectation to many Kenyans, the young ones. You know, please register as Kenyans. It's now free. Yeah. And then please make an effort, make a sacrifice, the way Raila Odinga sacrificed. Make a sacrifice and go on and get a voter's card. And then when you get the voter's card, I know a lot of Kenyans are saying, we don't care, we won't vote again. We are tired of voting and then the vote is stolen. We are tired of voting and then the government will bring into place mistreats us. The only way to make sure that is guarded is to vote. Last election, 8 million Kenyans did not vote. Those 8 million Kenyans by themselves would have brought a different government. So I believe every Kenyan now should think of their duty to nation. They have seen the duty Raila has done to nation, and that's what builds a nation. You see, President Kibaki used to ask, utasaidiwa, wewe mwenyewe utasaidia na nini? And the answer to that question is, wewe mwenyewe utasaidia kwa kujenga inji, you know, that sacrifice on that voting day. And even those who work for IBC to make sure there is free and fair election in every police station, because that's where the vote is stolen. Those clerks and the Gen Zs, you know, IBC hires those who have a voter's card and in their villages, and those who have come out. And even the young people. Raila Odinga started politics when he was young. Now this stops a young person from starting politics now and from reading the history and living the future. So we really need, you know, Kenyans, every single Kenyan, in this time to remember Raila Odinga for what he has done for the nation. And they decide also to do something for the nation. I'm sure if we had 10 Raila Odingas, we'll have a different nation altogether, especially from the politicians. Right. And therefore, that's my challenge to Kenyans, to take a leaf from Raila Odinga as he goes to meet his maker. I would imagine how it is, you know, in heaven, and how Kenyans are very excited there to receive him as they are excited here, those who have gone before us. And I really look forward to Kenyans doing something for their country, the way Raila Odinga did something for his country. Yeah. I believe, you know, his closer is like Mother Karua. You have seen their condolences, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, you have seen his message of condolences. He's been traveling. He cancelled his activities in UK where he was going to receive an award. And he's back this morning to receive the body of Raila Odinga and to be with the family. And as a party, Wiper Patriotic Front, who have worked very closely with Raila Odinga for the last 15, 18 years, 20 years in fact, we've always worked with Raila Odinga, and we had a similar cause that we are going to continue working with our partners to make sure that the dream of Raila Odinga is lived in this country.
Okay. Let me show you pictures coming live from Parliament precincts now. There's going to be a public viewing there. It's important to stress that part so that you understand that you are allowed to go and view the body of the late Honorable Raila Odinga in Parliament. That is happening as soon as the flight carrying the remains of the late Right Honorable Raila Odinga lands in Parliament, in JKIA. It is supposed to be ferried to the Lee Funeral Home and then straight to Parliament, where there'll be a public viewing all through the day today, actually. And tomorrow has also been declared a public holiday. The public viewing was supposed to start from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. You can see the preparations ongoing at Parliament precincts where the body will be put there for the public viewing that will start at 12 p.m. or slightly later than that, depending on how the schedule is done, because the plane was supposed to land at 8:30. It is most likely going to land at 9:30. We're keeping a track on the flight itself. It's around Somalia airspace, I believe, now. And then there's also at the Lee Funeral Home, there's preparations there led by CS Rebecca Miano, the tourism CS. That's where the body is expected to get to first before the Parliament preparations are already in top gear. You can see the military. There is a state funeral. That's why you also saw the gun carriage earlier on moving into position at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, and the flight tracking is also heading there in just a bit. As soon as it lands, the procession heads straight. That is the flight, the real-time flight tracker, one of the highly tracked flights of our time there. It was flying over the Somalia airspace. We expect it to land in the next hour or so at most. We'll be speaking to Emmanuel To, who is actually at the JKIA. Stephen Leto is in that flight. So he's also with the team that is led by the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, bringing back the body of the remains of the late Prime Minister Raila Odinga. At the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, it's jam-packed. In fact, there's a lot of the public people, the members of the public just chanting and running in. Let's listen to a bit of it and understand what the mood is like in that area. So it's important to note that there will be a public viewing at the National Assembly, the Parliament precincts from 12 to 5 p.m. There's going to be a barricade from JKIA, so you'll not even be allowed to get in there. There's quite a number. There's a public members surging in that area, but the members of the military are already in there. The gun carriage is also there. The military band is there. The procession will head out from JKIA. Members of the public are being stopped from getting into the JKIA, but most of them are already there. But there's going to be a public viewing at the Parliament precincts from 12 p.m. to around 5 p.m. today. All right, so as soon as that happens, we'll keep you covered on wall-to-wall coverage there. But Willis, this brings to mind something else that happened earlier on. And the Secretary General for ODM, Edwin Sifuna, actually apologized for it. The manner in which this news broke to the members of the public, the ODM brigade, and Kenyans at large. Is it time to review the protocols around announcements of significant figures who pass on, considering this is an era of, this is a digital era? Because all these protocols where it's the head of state what waited for to break the news used to happen before the digital time. At this time, by the time the head of state wants to break the news, everybody already knows, complete with pictures, times, frames, and everything else. Is it time that we review how such things should be done? Or are the digital members just an insensitive lot that then breaks the news regardless of whether the family knows or doesn't?
You know, I will not call the digital group an insensitive lot. I'll actually call out the state. The state is lethargic and it's not adapting to the times. Because social media is simply a social conversation. It's like trying to stop people from talking at the family level. If I know something has happened and I'm with my brother here, I will mention it, we can discuss it. That's what social media is about. But when it comes to sensitive information like this, the state must be alive and attuned to the new tools that exist, that have made interactions and the sharing of news to be very fast. And William Ruto, for in all unfairness to him, in my view, did not handle this information rightly. Because the first thing that they did was, he acted as if everything was normal. His first morning session was to sign bills in State House. You know, when you're signing bills into laws in State House, and you have social media that's abuzz with information, he lost an opportunity. What should have happened, because I do believe that when the unfortunate demise of Baba happened, amongst the very first people to be briefed was William Ruto. The very first, I believe. I believe the first less than even 5 people to know was him. He should have taken cognizance of the fact and the moments we are in, that this information can easily seep through social media. He should have, at first instance, having informed the family, even before visiting them, made that public announcement. So that the state takes initiative and ownership of how we are going to handle this information, and also helps people to process. Because part of mourning is processing and coming to terms with it. So we lost almost 2 hours before you could say what seemed to be a semblance of confirmation. And that caused anxiety in very many people. So the state needs to, in my view, relook into its protocols on handling some of this. And in looking into those protocols, they must be alive and attuned to the modern tools that we have in our hands. But where it's information that gets to the hands of the state at first instance, the state should not act like trying to catch up. They should seize the moment. Even if it is not a physical appearance in the press, but the proclamation should be made at the earliest available opportunity. But maybe some people may argue that it's a way of also managing public anxiety that allow it to seep, let people start coming to terms with it, instead of just, boom, this is the breaking news, so-and-so is dead, we are announcing. Of course, I don't want to say or even fall true to much. I don't think there's anybody in Kenya who was ready or knew how to handle the demise of Raila Odinga. Nobody could be prepared psychologically. Nobody saw it coming. So nobody, we can say, had a template of how I'm going to handle this, how I'm going to communicate, how I'm going to react. So I will not fault him that hard. Okay. I will take cognizance of the fact that there was only one Raila Odinga. And when Raila Odinga is not there, nobody had prepared, nobody has been trained on how to handle the absence of Raila Odinga. So even today, you are going to see the reactions across the entire nation. Yeah. Nobody's prepared how to mourn Raila Odinga. We always mourned with Raila Odinga, taking him to funerals. But now you're asking the Kenyan people to mourn Raila Odinga. Nobody knows how to do it. So even if you see some people overexert, you see some people are overwhelmed by emotions, they don't know how to mourn him. They're now dealing with it as it has happened. So emotions may flare, People may faint, collapse. Some may be speechless. Some may do things that others may not approve. But that is how they are reacting. Nobody has ever been prepared on how to mourn Raila Odinga. I had to shed a tear. I rarely cry. But you can't know when it will come.
Yeah.
When it comes, it's the reality that Baba is not there. Baba was always a factor of our lives.
Yeah.
When you factor your life, when you factor your movement, you factor your politics, your law, those of us who will litigate in public law issues, Baba is a factor. How do we come to terms with his absence? We don't know. So allow Kenyans to react and to mourn in whatever way they will. And don't condemn anybody in the manner in which they act.
Okay.
Because no one has ever been prepared on how to deal with the absence of Raila Odinga.
All right. A quick update here that the flight we are tracking in real time is now within the Kenyan airspace. It's around the Elwak region. This is we are tracking it live now. It's around Mandera County, actually, coming all the way to JKIA. So it will be landing in the next 50 or 54 minutes, to be precise. So the flight carrying the remains of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is finally within the Kenyan airspace in the Mandera area. It's heading straight to the JKIA. It will be landing in the next 53 minutes now. And there's a lot of preparations already there. The gun carriage is ready. Lee Funeral Home is also ready. There's about 600, we've been informed, but that's about 600 kilometers, 621 kilometers to landing. This is the expected time in the next 53 minutes or so. It's now within the Kenyan airspace. And the reality now starts to dawn. And the gun carriage is ready. Parliament is ready for public viewing from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Lee Funeral Home is expected to receive the one person that has been described as an enigma, the Baba of the people of Kenya, the political leader. And many people are terming this the end of an era. Let me show you live pictures from Parliament there to show you just how they give you an update of our preparations and top gear. Everything is almost ready now because in the next 53 minutes or so, the plane will touch down at the JKIA. There'll be a public viewing in that region. We'll be touching base with one Seth Olale who's already there. He's outside JKIA, I've just been informed. And then there's Emmanuel To inside JKIA. There's Stephen Leto inside the plane that is now within the Kenyan airspace. Sam Gituku is in Bondo. In Kisumu, we have Laura Otieno. We are covering this for you end to end. And like Willis Otieno says, nobody knows how to mourn the one person who's been described as the enigma. Those are live pictures from Parliament precincts where the body will be laid for a public viewing from 12 p.m. And in the next 52 minutes or so, the plane will touch down at the JKIA. We are now within the Kenyan airspace. Let me show you live pictures from the Lee Funeral Home as well. This is where preparations are ongoing. There's a bouquet there that we're heading in that we believe will be put on the casket. That casket will be draped in the Kenyan flag. That region is being manned by CS Rebecca Miano, Tourism CS. She's in charge of that. The cabinet being a state funeral, everyone has been given different roles. The Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi is leading the delegation that is bringing back the body of the late Raila Odinga. They are within the Kenyan airspace. We are aware now. In the next 50 minutes or so, they'll be touched down in JKIA. The Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, is leading the funeral committee in collaboration with the Deputy Chair, who's now the Deputy Chair of the funeral committee, who's Oburu Oginga, who's Raila Odinga's elder brother. And also we have pictures from outside the JKIA and inside as well. You can see there's a barricade, like I'd mentioned earlier on. The members of the public are being stopped from storming the area. There are dignitaries already inside JKIA and in the international arrivals area where the gun carriage is already in place. We believe that they will follow the procession all the way to Lee Funeral Home and then straight to Parliament for a public viewing. And we were talking about the issues of and I want to hear what Manza has to say about this announcement and how it all happened. Do we fault the state for the delay of it all? Because we had the Secretary General of ODM, Edwin Sifuna, he had to apologize for how members of the public, how Kenyans received this information. But there's also the other side that people say that the state has to be cognizant of anxiety that it might create, such an announcement might create. But this is a different time. It's the 21st century, where it's digital first. People will find out things early. Should the state now have changed their protocols of how to do this, so that the moment they are aware, they tell the country? Or should they just wait and let it simmer on social media?
First, I want to say that my own experience, the first phone call I received about his death came from even my village. A young man was very curious, what has happened? And I told him, honestly, I didn't have information, but I'm going to find out. And they came 10, 20 phone calls, each one of them, from different parts of the country. I wanted to find information. And I believe the president should have been, other than the family, was the first or second one to know about this and to confirm. And this was very early in the morning. So before he went on other duties, I think, for somebody the level of Raila Odinga, and that's, you should have taken the earliest possible initiative to consult with the family and to break the news, and even say, I'll be back to give further details, updates. But you cannot let it run for two hours. People thinking it's a rumor. Others think it's a lie. But now it had become too much so that it cannot be a lie. And we started looking for people very close to the family who were now confirming, and yet the nation isn't.
Yeah.
And we have...
Also, hold that thought a bit. I'll come back to you to finish that thought process of how government should have handled the announcement. But let me cross over to JKIA, where Seth Olale is standing by. He's right outside JKIA. Remember, Emmanuel Toy is inside JKIA. So let me cross over to Seth. Seth, good morning. It's good to see you there. How is the situation where you are right now? What is the mood like, and what is the plan?
Well, good morning, Trevor Mbija. The situation here at the JKIA entrance, security installations are battling very hard to contain a massive crowd that has been gathering here as early as from 4 a.m. The crowd getting larger and larger by the minute. This is an attempt to go all the way through the security checkpoints and to the main international arrival section, but this particular security installation here that comprises the National Youth Service and plainclothes police officers, the GSU, all this trying to contain mourners who have been here from 4 a.m. in large numbers. They want access to the main entrance, but according to the security officers here, they are under very strict instructions to contain them at this particular point, because remember that also there is activity right inside the airport. We saw earlier convoys of VIPs, including members of parliament, including senior government state officials, making their way inside the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. More and more leaders starting to arrive, and also we are seeing senior police officers as well as military service members making their way here. And this is just part of what was actually intended, because this was expected. Huge crowds were expected to make their way here at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to receive the remains of the late Raila Odinga. And the mourners here have just been singing, they have just been airing some of the quotes that they used to hear from the late Raila Odinga. So far, we saw tear gas being lobbed when this particular crowd actually at some point overpowered the security officers while they attempted to make their way past the security checkpoint. We've also seen this security installation behind me being beefed up by more and more anti-riot police officers. Some of them have just actually arrived, and you're going to see them just, seconds away from this particular moment. And this is what I'm talking about. There has been reinforcement in terms of security being beefed up. All these barricades just outside the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport security checkpoint, making sure that the mourners, hundreds of them who have turned up since 4 a.m. at this particular point, many came, walked all the way here. Some are arriving in buses, others in motorbikes, and this is just an attempt for them to receive the remains of the late, the former Prime Minister, the late Raila Odinga, who we are told that the plane, the aeroplane, carrying the remains of Raila Odinga is actually right now in the Kenyan airspace as we speak. So according to them, it is just a matter of now minutes, if not at least an hour, before they receive who they call a legend, who they call a hero. And this particular scenario here outside the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, of course, has also affected the normal activity in terms of the staff, the Kenya Airports Authority staff that usually, come past this particular point through buses, through, personal cars. But right now, everyone is being forced to alight at this particular moment for some screening, security screening, before now being allowed. So even the staff, who work inside the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport today are being found in this particular situation. And this has been happening since we arrived here at 6 a.m. And there is no each and every one, if you are a staff, you of course are being told to produce your staff IDs, but it is very not the case for the thousands of mourners here who, are carrying leaves, and some of them, just carrying placards just to show their support, for their fallen heroes. So this is the situation, at least for now, here at Trevor, at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Quite some activity, more and more dignitaries arriving. We have air surveillance from security agencies just trying to ensure that each and everything is in order. And like I said, we have a contingent of a multi-agency security personnel here at the JKA, just trying to contain the mourners who have arrived here in hundreds, just in solidarity of part and parcel of mourners. Like I said earlier on, the security has really been beefed up. Mourners are not being allowed to, cross over from where we are now standing at this particular moment. Only the staff that work inside the JKIA, at least for now, are being allowed access. And this is the situation here. And of course, we are on standby any moment from now to see the aeroplane carrying the remains of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga touch down at the JKIA. And from here, Trevor Umbija, there will be a massive procession all the way to Nairobi CBD, past the CBD, all the way to Lee, and then thereafter for the public viewing at Parliament Building. So expect traffic disruption along Mombasa Road, because the crowd behind me is going to escort the entourage, the entourage carrying the cortege and, the remains of the late, the former Prime Minister, all the way from the JKIA International Arrival Section, all the way to Lee Funeral Home, and later on to Parliament Building. So that is the plan, and they are aware of that. And so this just part and parcel of what's being expected later today at Trevor Umbija.
You're actually right. The plane is just about 40 minutes out. That's 438 kilometers. We're tracking it live. But do we know about the exit plan from there? Are we going to use the expressway or are we going to use Mombasa Road? But that's Seth Olale speaking to us outside JKA. There's a lot of activity there, so we'll allow him to keep covering that. You can see on your screen there are 4 different compartments. The first is Parliament, where the public viewing will be happening from 12 to 3 p.m. You can see preparations in top gear. In fact, they're almost complete as we speak. On your right, you can see the live flight tracker in real time. We know it's within the Kenyan airspace. It's in Wajir, to be specific, 438 kilometers away. In the next 40 minutes, they should be landing. In fact, that time changes in real time. Now I've been told it's 427 kilometers out because it's live tracking. They're moving as we speak. In the next 39 minutes or so, they'll be touched down at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. That is the flight that is carrying the remains of the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and the code name now for that plane is Rao 001. That's what they're calling it, as a code name.